Hello, BookTube. This is Aaron from Aaron Read a Book or Aaron Read a Book. I'm going to do part three of the joint Nebula and Hugo Award winners. We are entering the mid 70s, and these next four books will take us out of this, well, to the end of the 70s, um, and then the steady decline of science fiction to this day. There are loads of great books left on the list, though. So, the first one, the winner after The Dispossessed was in 1975, 1976, and that was Joe Haldeman's The Forever War. And this book also won the Locus Award as well. Um, so another sort of triple header. This is I really enjoyed this book when I read it, but it was quite a long time ago now. So I definitely need to reread it, especially since the sequel of this book is also on the list later down. And this is sort of an anti-war novel again. It was written sort of largely based on the feeling Joe Haldeman had serving in Vietnam and his return to the United States, and sort of it's partially sort of to do with shell shock and returning to culture, your original culture after seeing horrible things and stuff. So it follows a young physics student, and he is conscripted into like this super high IQ super soldier sort of unit, and it follows him through training, and then it follows his whole military career. So he goes on different what's the word? I can't remember the word, but he goes on different trips out to the war and returns each time, and the they're fighting an alien race that no one really knows anything about. They just know that the aliens attacked their colony ships, and every time they travel out and come back, they lose like 20 years because of relativity. So they have this incredible close to the speed of light travel, but it does mean you lose years. So every time he comes back to Earth, Earth is 20 years different. And then by the end of the novel, he's an old man, and he's sort of a weird outcast from a bygone era because hundreds of years have gone on. And like, for example, everyone's homosexual and he is heterosexual. So he's ostracized because of that. And sort of other cultural things have made him a weird outcast. And that's obviously how Haldeman must have felt about the Vietnam War as well. But yeah, really great book, and I need to reread it and read the next one so I can talk about the next one as well, um, which is later on this list. The next book that won is one of my personal favourites, and that was in 1977 to 1978, and that was Gateway by Frederik Pohl. Um, this is the first book in the Heechee saga, as you can see there. Um, it's just like a 5 book series based around this concept, and it's another found object sort of book. So this is a big hollowed out asteroid with loads of ships in it. It's got nearly 1,000 flying saucers there. So there's this found object with all the ships in it, and they don't know how like almost anything about this alien race, but they find artifacts and things, and they don't really know how to operate these ships, but they do know how to set a destination. And if you play with the ships at all, um, it always messes up. So so basically, there's like a trial and error thing where you jump in the ship, shoot off, and you don't know how long you're going to be gone. You don't know where you're going. You could be going into into like certain death, or you could be going on a trip that's longer than human lifetime, or you could be going to a planet that has all these Heechee artifacts, and you could be rich, like insanely rich for the rest of your life. So, this book follows a miner who wins the lottery, and with their lottery ticket, they buy a ticket on one of the ships going out and risking everything for even further riches. So I think there's like different size ships. So there's like 3-person ones, 5-person ones. I think he's in a 5-person crew. So you follow him and or I think it's her actually, her and the crew out uh, on their adventure. And I won't say too much more about it because it's a really entertaining book. Uh, I have never read any of the other ones in the series, so I really should because I've read this one like 2 or 3 times and I love it. So that's the next one in the list, and that's a high recommend. Right, the next book that won was Dreamsnake by Vonda McIntyre, and this one in 1978/1979. So right at the end of the 70s. I hadn't read this one until last week actually, and it's not one of my favourites on the list, I would say, but it is interesting and somewhat groundbreaking, kind of on a feminist level. So the story is about a woman healer named Snake, and this is the setting is it is a post-apocalyptic novel, but it's one of these post-apocalyptic novels where it's so far in the future it's not even really like Earth is now. So uh, she is trained in a community uh, of healers, and they use gene manipulation to create snakes whose venom can cure certain things. And they also have these snakes called dream snakes, which are from off world that some aliens supply them that they have no way of getting them, and they've been unable to breed them. Apart from snakes being able to create a small batch, clone a small batch, which is really difficult apparently. And because of their training, their bodies break down a bit because they have to inject themselves with so much venom. um, but the rest of the world is sort of there's a city in the middle of a desert, and they're quite advanced and have contact with the aliens, and but almost the rest of the place is all sort of Mad Max style roving bands and things. Um, Although not as violent. Um, so the story is Snake leaving the healers and her travels. This was adapted from a novella, so you get after the first story, you sort of it loses its way a bit. Like she meets these people and attempts to heal someone, and her dream snake gets killed, and then the rest of the book is her trying to find a new dream snake. Uh, and there's also kind of a really badly done love story in there as well. Um, but there is really enjoyable elements about it. I like that it's about a healer because you don't get many books about healers, and it is feminist in a way that Snake is is willing to have sort of sex with people that she's not in love with, even though she's in love with this guy. She's willing to have casual sex, which must have been quite uh, sort of an unusual thing to write about in the 70s. So it has its merits, but I just felt, and I actually quite like Vonda McIntyre's writing, but I felt it loses its way a bit because it was adapted from a novella and it feels a bit unplanned, the second half of the book, but definitely worth a read, and I would definitely try out some of her Star Trek books. She's written a lot of Star Trek books. The next book that won, and it's the end of the 70s, was in 1979/1980, and that was Arthur C. Clarke's The Fountains of Paradise. So I mentioned this one earlier, where I said Arthur C. Clarke invented the space elevator. He didn't actually invent it. I looked it up after, it was one of those things that had been around for like hundreds of years as a vague concept, but no one had spoken about it in a long time. So he sort of popularized the idea again. And this book is about the building of a space elevator using a very fine filament made of diamonds. So the concept of space elevator is that you have this very thin, very strong material that goes from Earth up to a platform in space, and if you can get it out of orbit or into orbit, sorry, you can send things up and down using no fuel because you would normally need enormous amounts of rocket fuel to get out of Earth's atmosphere. So this is a concept that now is becoming slightly more realistic as well because they've invented sort of nanocarbons and things that might be able to do this now, but it would be enormous expense. And in the novel, there's only two places that it can be built, just because of the way the world rotates or whatever. And that one is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which is obviously very hard to do, and the other is in a country called Srikanda, which is a thinly veiled reference to Sri Lanka, where obviously Clarke lived at this time. And the Sri Lanka or Srikanda place is where they can build it is on the top of a mountain that there's a Buddhist temple on. So there's issues there, and the main story follows the lead scientist who's trying to build the space elevator, and there's people trying to get him to build it on Mars and stuff as well. So there's some sort of politics and things involved. The story's also sort of sandwiched between two other stories. One is the story of a Sri Lankan or Sri Lankan king who's building these pleasure fountains, the fountains of paradise, hundreds and hundreds of years before, and this is based on a real Sri Lankan king. And the other story is a first contact story, hundreds of years in, or I don't know if it tells you how long in the future it is, but it's far in the future when aliens are making first contact with uh, Earth, and it's in the context of the space elevator and stuff. So, again, I really remember enjoying this novel. It was a long time ago I read it, so I'd like to reread it again. It's one of those, like I said before, obviously Clarke's great at taking a scientific concept or piece of technology and digging into it and building the story around it. So another good Arthur C. Clarke. Um, yeah, so that's the end of the 70s. So it's a good place to stop. Next time we move on to the 80s. If you've read any of these books and you like them, let me know. If you've read Forever Peace, the follow-up to Forever War, let me know as well. I'm interested in what people think about that one. Have a good day, BookTube.